Yet the DA-led coalition has failed to take immediate action to protect communities. Extortion started in a DA-led Cape Town.
Honorable Mqina, yeah, you're right. Citizens of South Africa are not safe. As long as you have politicians in red overalls helping themselves to Gogo's pensions at the VBS Bank, they will not be safe.
When he talks about the original of criminals, it's his ancestors. They stole our land. We want our land back. Shin, who are you to talk about human rights here?
You wanna borrow this anytime, eh? Malusi Boy was fired from the DA, fired. And he's now being prosecuted for 1 billion rands of a fraud. He's actually out on bail at the moment. How many EFF comrades have been fired from the EFF? Look at your comrade Floyd Shivambu, yeah? He's now gone to the MO. He swapped the red overall for a camo overall. His next overall will be an orange overall.
Over here, the DA-led coalition government are still adding more committees, forming more task forces, and finding new ways to stall the actual work. They've told us that they're making strides in hotlines. Hotlines do not work. They've essentially handed us a phone number and called it a solution.
Honorable Mqina, where are you? She's left the house now because she knows what's coming. Under the incompetent leadership of accused number one, Master Zuma, accused number one, that is the root cause of this problem in the first place.
Wow, guys. So usually these kinds of clashes in parliament usually amaze me because they speak to, for me, they are a big history lesson because they speak to me on how multiple factions of South Africa still see each other and still see South Africa. So why the likes of the DA wishes to continuously expose what they see as corruption that actually has its roots in the ANC, the Zuma-led ANC, especially during the state capture report under, yes, we heard from the Zondo Commission and the EFF. The EFF and the MK party now under leadership of Zuma still see certain discrepancies in how the DA is trying to regulate and try to fight several issues of corruption in the land. And so it's really interesting that these discussions and these arguments find their way into the parliament and really help us to see how the different factions in South Africa actually see each other and how they perceive South Africa. So this is a really intense, sort of like almost intense battle between the DA, MK, and the EFF, where a massive argument breaks out with the DA's MP Badenhorst and the EFF and MK's Mokoena, where they argue on the root causes and the origins of extortion and, you know, the whole thing with extortionism in South Africa. So let's sit back and just enjoy, watch till the end, especially the speeches, because they're really loaded with a lot of perceptions, helps us to understand how the EFF, the MK, and the DA actually perceive this problem of crime and extortionism in South Africa. And I'll be back with a really interesting analysis I found on Business Tech on a new kind of what it calls a mafia that's hitting a new kind of business in South Africa. So in other words, there's a new area that a certain group of mafia, a new kind of mafia, has actually targeted in its pursuit of business in South Africa.
I'm now inviting the next speaker on the speakers list, Honorable Mqina, representing EFF.
Chairperson, I stand here as a proud member of the Economic Freedom Fighters and a committed ground force and a dedicated representative of the people of South Africa. And today I stand before you to debate on extortion, a persistent problem affecting all of us, a pandemic that has gripped this country, controlling territory and drawing profits through illegal means. It is an issue which not only hurts our economy, but is destroying businesses, delaying infrastructure projects, and making everyday life harder for ordinary South Africans. Firstly, let's look at the damage this problem has caused. Billions of rands meant for important projects have been wasted due to corruption and delays. Projects that were supposed to help our communities are standing incomplete, services delayed. As the Economic Freedom Fighters, we have asked President Cyril Ramaphosa in this house at the NCOP and on various other platforms to declare this a national crisis or a state emergency. But to date, he has not done so. He has ignored this issue, allowing our people to suffer. Declaring this as a crisis will help us get resources and support needed to tackle the problem properly, starting with the ad hoc committee we had put as a motion in the National Assembly. This is necessary. This is a necessary act as extortion threatens the safety and well-being of our people and holds back our country's progress. Across all provinces, our people are subjected to violent extortionary practices, fees, syndicates, as criminals threaten local residents. And if the president does not take this seriously, then who will? We need strong leadership to act immediately on this problem. Every day that this issue is ignored, more people are affected, and our country falls further behind. The process of declaring a national crisis relies on leaders the South African people voted for. Yet the DA-led coalition has failed to take immediate action to protect communities. Simple, necessary steps are delayed, leaving citizens unprotected. Why? How much longer must South Africans wait for true accountability? Instead, we are provided a document that tells us about alarming rise of construction mafia in South Africa, KZN being number 1, Western Cape being number 2, Eastern Cape, Gauteng 3 and 4. Asifuna uvazitethe thina sifuna abantu babe protected. Despite efforts like multidisciplinary extortion intervention plan and Operation Silapa, extortionist groups continue to thrive because many people are afraid to report them, and some are even working with them. Let this government be reminded of our people's strength. It was ordinary South Africans who, through strong willpower, pushed for change against apartheid. South Africans have not forgotten their past. The first passed laws, land dispossession, this unresolved issue of extortion may lead to a breakout of frustration if left ignored. We must not undermine our people, nor should we take their patience for granted. Chairperson, the rise of kidnappings related to extortion is another worrying sign. During oversight in Limpopo, we discovered that people are afraid to talk about what is happening because they fear for their lives. This highlights the need for a strong plan to fight extortion and restore trust in our communities. All this happens under the watchful eye of our police service, as there is a lack of proper and visible policing in many rural areas and townships. Look what just happened this week in Mqhekezweni, a great place. But yet the government says that they are taking care of traditional leaders. Where was a police mobile station in the great place for inkosikazi yabaThembu to be shot? Our constitutional section 205 mandates South African Police Service to prevent and fight crime. But the South African Police Service itself is overwhelmed, and some cases implicated in these crimes. The Prevention Organized Crime Act criminalizes organized crime, including extortion. It is our duty to enforce it. When an investigative officer is assigned to probe someone they trained with, or even their commander, it creates a conflict that undermines justice. What is needed is a new recruiting system and a specialized training academy focused on fighting extortion, establishing a specialized department, much like the Border Management Authority formed in 2020, to improve the management of South Africa's borders and enhance national security. The main issue is that many people are struggling to find jobs and support their families. That has driven some into desperate situations which lead them to extortion. Extortion is a direct consequence of unemployment. Extortion started in a DA-led Cape Town as a problem in construction industry, but now has spread to other areas. Criminals are demanding money from business owners, workers, and even people trying to live their daily lives. A white contractor who was building RDB houses near Delft here in Cape Town was shot and killed because he refused to pay a protection fee. This man lost his life because criminals are controlling construction projects and demanding money. This is not an isolated incident. It is happening in many areas across the country. In Gqeberha, for an example, you need to pay a protection fee if you want to avoid having your car hijacked. Criminals are forcing property owners to share their rental income with them in exchange of safety. This shows how deeply extortion has rooted itself in our society. It is not only criminals we are dealing with here. There are also corrupt government officials who demand money for projects or process payments. Ubona nje into yoba kukho ii-projects ezidileyayo okanye ezikolapsayo because umntu ufuneka athi make sure into yoba ubhatala laa mntu uzawubhatala. Uthathwe i-6 months, unyaka, i-contract ayilindele imali, funeka ibhatala abantu bayo. Kodwa ayikwazi ubabhatala ngoba akakabhatalwa ngurhulumente. This corruption has caused major delays in the payment of contractors, making it difficult for essential projects to be completed. The combination of criminal extortion and government corruption is a double blow in our communities. In Durban, Umtata, Gqeberha, Umlazi, KwaNongoma, Cape Town, and Gauteng, people are forced to pay protection fees, avoid violence. Wake wayivaphi loo nto? For instance, here in Cape Town, le DA, scholar transport contractors must pay fees to operate, putting children's education at risk. Thina siyi-EFF siyafowunelwa ngamapolisa, bathi nabo, bathi abantwana mabangayi esikolweni namhlanje, ukuba aba bantu bane-scholar transport ababhatali imali. Abantwana ngoku are not going to school because funeka kubhatalwe i-scholar transport. Even government officials are involved. Malusi Boy from the Democratic Alliance was linked to a 1 billion tender scandal, showing that extortion affects all levels. It told DI 30 London, 1 billion imkile. The EFF calls for the government to declare extortion as a national crisis. Chairperson, the Economic Freedom Fighters, has here in the House and many other platforms offered numerous solutions to this problem. We have highlighted extortion as a complex and deeply rooted problem that requires a robust response from our justice system. We need to establish specialized courts or designated judges assigned to handle extortion cases promptly. We need strict whistleblowers protection laws and mechanisms put in place that will ensure that individuals with information about extortion or other crimes can come forward without fear of backlash. Enkosi Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Ndlovukazi. I'm now calling the next speaker on the speakers list, Honorable Mokoena.
Revolutionary greetings to my President Jacob Zuma, my party leader, Dr. John M. Hlophe, the Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, Honorable Minister, the MEC, and my fellow delegates. Good afternoon. This is a national crisis. Our beloved South Africa faces a challenge that's not going to fix itself overnight or go away. We find ourselves at a crossroads where we have to decide what kind of country we want to be. Are we a country that allows fear, violence to shape our communities, or are we a nation that steps up, takes responsibility, and does the hard work to create a better future? South Africans deserve more than to live in fear of thugs and criminals running rampage in our streets. They deserve to live in a community where hard work is rewarded, where business can thrive, and where every child grows up safe, dreaming big. But dreams alone won't get us anywhere. We've got to take bold steps. We've got to be willing to make the changes that need to be made. And we've got to be unflinching in our commitment to justice and safety of our people. That's what today's struggle is all about. And that's why I stand here today. This is not a kind of crisis that makes headline one day and gets forgotten the next. This one is clearly here to stay. So unless we tackle it together head on, it's not going anywhere. It's as if we are living in a bad action movie, but instead of a strong hero saving our day, we've got a cast of villains, construction mafias, extortionists, criminals. They're threatening our communities, undermining the rule of law, and pushing our country to its breaking point. Now, if you look at our opposition, the DA-led coalition government, they'll tell you that everything is under control. They'll point you to the so-called multidisciplinary extortion intervention plan with subs and mountain of committees that they've put up, while they're busy patting themselves on the back with decisive plans that do not work. Ask anyone in our communities, and they'll tell you this. Intervention plans that have put in place are just merely non-existent. A lot of fancy word, but little to show for it. Let's talk numbers. Since 2014, these construction mafias have spread like wildfire. They started out in KZN, my beautiful province, but now they're in every corner of our country. They didn't arrive quietly either. They burst in like unwanted guests at a party, and they've been taking up residence in nearly every industry. These criminals are brazen, marching onto construction sites, demanding protection fees, threatening local leaders, and they've got the nerve to call it economic transformation. But let's be real, these criminals aren't interested in transformation. They're interested in domination. They're not building communities or lifting people up. They are tearing us down in the name of green. Meanwhile, over here, the DA-led coalition government are still adding more committees, forming more task forces, and finding new ways to stall the actual work. It's almost as impressive as talent dragging, but it's not really working. They've told us that they're making strides in hotlines. Hotlines do not work. They've essentially handed us a phone number and called it a solution. I wonder how this coalition government will feel if they had to dial a hotline every time one of these thugs showed up at their doorstep. I think you'll realize pretty quickly that a hotline does not stop threats or keep our people safe. Over 6,000 extortionist cases have been reported. And how many convictions do we have? 178. 6,000 cases, hundreds of communities under siege, and yet only 178 criminals actually convicted in the last 5 years. The people are terrified. Contractors are losing their businesses. Our economy is bleeding, all while the government offers lip service and hotlines. But let me tell you what the MK party stands for, because we're not here to play games. We're not interested in passing the buck or creating awareness. We're here to protect our people. And to that, we demand an independent anti-mafia task force, one with real power, free from political interference, that answers directly to Parliament. This task force will be focused entirely on dismantling this extortionist ring. We expect regular, transparent updates and progress, because unlike certain parties, we believe in holding ourselves accountable to our people. The DA-led coalition government methods have been tried, have been tested, they have failed. They've got more task forces than actual results. While they tied up in endless meetings, people are now wondering if they are next on these mafia lists. And meanwhile, the government's answer to a fragmented, sluggish response that leaves our police under-resourced, our committees overwhelmed, and our people unprotected. Imagine if we applied the same haphazard response to something like fire. Picture it, blazing fire has broken out, spreading through our communities, and the DA-led coalition government arrives with a bucket of water and a promise to organize more resources soon. How do we expect this approach to work with organized crime? Crime that is sophisticated, crime that is well-funded, that doesn't wait for committees to decide on the next step. The MK party stands ready to lead. Our proposal for an independent anti-mafia task force is simple but effective. It will operate independently without the usual political meddling that we've seen within the GNU. This is about restoring safety, dignity of our communities, and there's nothing more revolutionary than putting power back into the hands of the people, free from fear. And let's be clear, the task force isn't a temporary fix. It's a commitment for a safer future, a future where our people can live and work without constant threats of extortion, where our leaders don't have to look over their shoulders, where our communities can thrive, knowing their government is working for them and not just talking all about it, as we've seen within the GNU.
I'm so jealous.
But if there's a silver lining, it is that the truth is finally coming out. And as painful as the moment of our country, we're hopeful that by the 2026 elections, South Africa would have had enough time to see that these promises are simply empty and hollow. The MK party will be here, ready and waiting to step in to bring the real change, to rebuild the trust of the nation, and to lead with genuine resolve. So in the regard, I suppose that we should thank you for making our path of victory much clearer. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mokoena. However, we've got the responsibility not to misrepresent facts. We don't have the DA-led GNU government. We've got the ANC-led government, GNU, which leads the government GNU. I think we must just put that straight on record. This is an ANC-led GNU, which is leading the government. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Khoshiabatu. The next speaker on the platform will be Honorable Badenhorst, Western Cape.
Honorable Chair, honorable members, fellow South Africans, isn't it ironic that in this house, we're deliberating a massive problem in this country in a debate that's sponsored by the ANC on how to take decisive measures to deal with the construction mafia and the systemic extortion in the construction industry in South Africa, when it is the regulations of the very same ANC under the incompetent leadership of accused number one. Remember him? Master Zuma, accused number one. That is the root cause of this problem in the first place. Honorable Malkuna, where are you? She's left the house now because she knows what's coming. Let us not sweep under the carpet the very origins of these so-called business forums. It was a national treasury regulation initiated by the Zuma state capture regime, which mandated that 30% of contract value for projects exceeding 50 million be allocated to local content. That's where it came from. However, this actually only applies to tenders for government contracts. But the misreading or the reframing of this provision, and we can debate whether it's deliberate or otherwise, gives an illusion of legitimate claims by these forums. Further fueled, honorable members, by the irresponsible usage of phrases like radical economic transformation, something many parties in this House have been guilty of in the past. Here's a staggering figure for you. The former Public Works and Infrastructure Minister estimated in 2023 that the damage caused by these criminal gangs hijacking construction sites have resulted in losses of more than 68 billion rand nationally. How many schools can we build with that? The remedy for this scourge lies somewhere between the effective application of legislation like the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act, number 8 of 2019, that contains important provisions relating to safeguarding of critical infrastructure and related measures in the private sector. The private sector can also come to the party, by applying for court orders and interdicts against illegal actions instigated by the mafias, employing security, private security on sites, but it's expensive. Real community engagement and local procurement of plant materials and labor that yield real, tangible benefits and are done through community leaders of good standing. Community leaders of good standing. Focus should be placed on local qualifying SMMEs to ensure when projects are conceived and procurement occurs, these are opportunities for the community to benefit from. Early engagement through credible forums with bona fide community liaison officers. Managing expectations is critical, as sometimes expectations of the local benefits are completely disproportionate to what is available. Alignment of state and private sector in their messaging and approach to prevent exploitation is crucial. So, Honorable Kahunda, I'm glad you got 5 minutes after me because you can come and tell us what you did as the mayor of Durban to stop construction mafia in its tracks. Be very interesting conversation that. Honorable Mtrina, yeah, you're right. Citizens of South Africa are not safe. As long as you have politicians in red overalls helping themselves to Gogo's pensions at the VBS Bank, they will not be safe. And yes, Malusi,
Order, Chair.
Malisi boy,
Order, Chair.
stop my time.
Order, Chair. When he talks about the original of criminals, it's his ancestors. They stole our land. We want our land back. Shin, who are you to talk about human rights here?
All right. That is not a point of order. That's not a point of order, it's a point of debate. Please. Over to you, Shin.
You wanna borrow this anytime, eh? Malusi boy was fired from the DA, fired. And he's now being prosecuted for 1 billion rands of a fraud. He's actually out on bail at the moment. How many EFF comrades have been fired from the EFF? Look at your comrade Floyd Chivambu, yeah? He's now gone to the MO. He swapped the red overall for a camo overall. His next overall will be an orange overall. Watch. Honorable Mamabolo, welcome from Gauteng province. I'm really sorry, but your merry band of ANC delinquents in Gauteng, often shunning the party, can't even supply water. You're going to run out of water. Now you're trying to fight construction mafia. It's not going to work. Just look at the latest AG report. It looks like you know nothing about financial management as well. But I must say the minister spoke sense. The minister said, let's collaborate. And there will be collaboration because our Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Honorable Dean McPherson, along with his Deputy Minister, Honorable Sikalala, in association with the Construction Industry Development Board, will bring key industry stakeholders together in Durban on the 19th of November to engage in dialogue, to reclaim construction sites, to restore safety and to tackle the crippling effect of criminal extortion tactics at our construction site. Let's hope that everybody who was so full of good ideas today and who are serious about stopping this scourge attend that conference on the 19th of this month. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, guys. I hope you found that, disagreements quite kind of interesting and informative. They speak to a lot of things that, have been going on and have been seen in the media and the news and how people analyze crime in South Africa. And so it's quite unfortunate how, the different factions actually see each other. And we keep on watching and reporting on how the different parties in the GNU and also in the opposition kind of like chart their routes to curb crime in South Africa. But one thing is certain is that, the fear of reporting is something that actually crops up, and also the need for kind of like law to protect whistleblowers so that at the end of the day, whistleblowers who end up with their passion to really save South Africa end up being protected by the law. All right. But anyway, I found this really interesting report on business tech that speaks of a new kind of mafia, and a new kind of businesses that are actually being attacked right now in South Africa. So it says that freight and logistics businesses in South Africa are now being targeted by organized criminal syndicates in mafia style attacks on delivery vehicles. Although I think this is kind of like common, because I've seen a lot of videos where there are attacks on this kind of vehicles that transfer money to the banks. Okay, but now it argues here that these kinds of attacks are now being spread now towards delivery vehicles. All right. So it says that this trend is prevalent in regions like in the Eastern Cape, and it has brought economic disruption, heightened fear, and also further strains on an already fragile economy. All right. It says that the emergence of these groups signal an evolution in organized crime as criminal syndicates exploit the vulnerabilities of businesses and public services for profit. Now, it says that several mafia-style groups have already become well known for their involvement in illegal activities across various sectors. One prominent example is the construction mafia, which the MK party actually in this video speaks a lot about, which has disrupted projects nationwide. It says that these groups, often associated with local business forums and connected to larger criminal networks, they actually extort a share of construction project profits through intimidation, violence, and threats. All right. Now, contractors across South Africa have increasingly been forced to comply with their demands or face severe repercussions, leading to significant project delays and financial losses. It speaks about the fact that the prevalence of such groups in construction has become a serious impediment to development in an industry that's critical to South Africa's infrastructure and economic growth. And likewise, the water tanker mafia. So this is a new interesting kind of mafia as well. It speaks about the water tanker mafia has capitalized on South Africa's water crisis and a chronic issue that's actually affecting many communities. It speaks about how that in regions with inadequate municipal water supply, these groups, they control the distribution of water, charging exorbitant fees to deliver this essential resource. And I think this one is really sad, because I've been following the reports in Johannesburg and how a water crisis is actually plaguing Johannesburg. And then if we have these kinds of groups that are actually sort of like increasing the pressure on the limited amount availability of water to the residents in Johannesburg and other cities where there's a water crisis, then I think that's quite an unfortunate incident. But anyway, it goes on to say that exploiting residents desperation, they have turned water scarcity into a lucrative racket, amplifying social tensions and adding to the hardship that is faced by vulnerable communities. Now, a new wave of criminal syndicates targeting business-owned delivery vehicles is now creating additional challenges. It says that data from Tracker South Africa's Vehicle Crime Index reveals that a marked increase in hijackings of business vehicles have been observed, and it's compared to private vehicles. So there's been an increase in hijacking of business vehicles compared to private vehicles, and it indicates that organized crime has shifted its focus to much more profitable targets. All right. It speaks here that in the first half of 2024 alone, hijackings accounted for 54% of all vehicle-related crimes, with business vehicles bearing a disproportionate risk. In the Eastern Cape alone, for example, business vehicles are 43% more likely to be targeted than personal vehicles, with courier, vans, and cargo trucks facing the highest risk. Now, these vehicles argues here that they often carry valuable goods, making them attractive to criminal groups looking to seize and resell items quickly for untraceable cash. Now, according to Gavin Kelly, who is the CEO of Freight Association RFA, road freight businesses, they face mafia-style attacks with hijackers aiming not only to seize the vehicles but also to take the cargo that they carry. And he said that this added layer of profitability has intensified the risks facing delivery and logistics companies, compelling them to invest in costly security measures. Now, it goes on to say that major courier companies, including industry players like the courier guy, have had to deploy armed escorts and implement other robust security protocols. And this increases the production costs of these businesses because, if safety was a guarantee in South Africa, probably there wouldn't be need for more investment in security. But now, investment in security has to be a part of the production cost of the business, and it's not guaranteed that, the business might produce the profit that will be enough to compensate for the costs. And so these are the kind of issues that end up eating into the GDP of a nation that's as boisterous as South Africa, and we end up having kind of like this long-term negative impact, higher difficulties to find solutions to crime, to really prop up the police service, to really fight unemployment, and these problems continue to recur, so to speak. Anyway, he argues that these additional expenses to these businesses, they are shrinking the profit margins and also creating significant challenges for logistics companies striving to maintain profitability in an environment of escalating costs and ongoing criminal threats. The complexity of the issue, it says here, varies by region. And as Duma Ngobo, who is the chief operating officer at Tracker, explains, that crime tends to shift across provinces over time. And there are different levels of crime based on the sophistication of the syndicates. So in Gauteng, for instance, it says here that the keyless entry relay attacks have actually made theft more common than hijacking, as criminals use advanced technology to access vehicles. And in contrast, the N2 corridor towards this region of Kebreha has actually seen a surge in hijackings, likely driven by the opportunistic crime fueled by economic instability and also high unemployment in the Eastern Cape. So the Eastern Cape is actually one of the zones where this attacks now on freight and delivery vehicles actually seems to be much more dominant. So it says that for these criminals, hijacking delivery vehicles and looting their contents often offer quick, untraceable profits, exacerbating the challenges faced by road freight business operations in the region. And as these mafia-style groups continue to proliferate, South Africa's businesses are under increasing pressure to adapt to a much more hostile environment. And for this reason, I really salute South African businessmen, because it must be so difficult to conduct business in this region. I mean, like in Nigeria, for example, I know one of the biggest challenges of conducting business is actually electricity. So there's a lack of electricity, what many South Africans will call load shedding today. There's a kind of like a limited electricity supply to really power business activities. And so we have a lot of businesses relying on diesel and generators, and that actually accrues increases the production cost for conducting the business. But in South Africa, it's actually a different kind of challenge, and so it's associated with violence and crime and threats to life. And so that's why I really respect South African businessmen for really pushing through and really helping to prop up South Africa, where South Africa still represents one of the biggest economies in Africa. Kudos, guys. Kudos to you. So I see here that it says that final report, it says that the cumulative impact of such organized criminal activity has serious implication for the country's economy, as rising security costs erode profitability and businesses are forced to weigh the risks of operating in certain areas. Now, addressing these complex and evolving threats would require coordinated efforts from both the private sector and law enforcement to restore security and also enable businesses to operate sustainably amidst South Africa's growing crime challenges. So these are kind of like the new mafia style attacks that actually businesses, especially now in the Eastern Cape, will need to be aware of, and increases much more the volatility of the business environment in South Africa. Quite unfortunate issues really cropping up. But anyway, every society has its challenges. No society is perfect. South Africa is still doing really well. I really applaud you South Africans. I'm really proud many times when I hear, despite these challenges, you guys are still pushing through, really fighting and trying to really fight. While many fight for social cohesion, many fight for profitability, and the country still seems to be really moving forward despite its challenges. I'm really impressed by that. But anyway, this would actually be all. I hope you enjoyed the clash that here in this video in the Parliament, EFF, MK, the GNU versus his opposition. Share your thoughts. What do you think about it? Share your thoughts in the comments.